Okay, I'm gonna go right here on Wilshire Boulevard in the Westwood neighborhood of Los Angeles. I'm gonna take you fans of popular culture of the 20th century to the place where the 22-year-old Frederick Carl Prinze committed suicide at 3:30 a.m. January 28, 1977. The Prince of Comedy, Freddie Prinze. He had originally chosen his name as Freddie King, but Ellen King had already had that, co-opted that name as the King of Comedy. So he said, okay, well, I'll be the Prince of Comedy. So he changed his name to Freddie Prinze. He was Hungarian and Puerto Rican. So on that direction right there, a little bit east of us, where that building is on the corner of Comstock, where incidentally Rodney Dangerfield lived before he died. I'm gonna take you to 10300 Beverly Hills Plaza Hotel, where the young, sad Freddie Prinze, unfortunately, and for no reason except that he was suffering from massive depression, he put a gun to his head and blew his brains out. God love him. If you were alive at that time period, it shocked the nation, if not the world. I mean, he was the hippest, coolest thing going in that whole time period. I mean, he was on everything, just like the celebrities are today, but I mean, he was just, everything about the guy was just, he was just a happy-go-lucky guy. His show was one of the top shows, Chico and the Man. I mean, in fact, like when I saw him, I feel good because he just always looked happy and he was cool and he was a great person that a young man could model himself after. And there it is in room 216 on the night, like I said, or the early morning of January 28th, put the gun to his head in front of his business manager, Marvin Dusty Snyder. The last thing that Marvin said before he jumped to pull the gun out of the young Freddie Prinze's hands is, think of your mother and your baby boy. And all he heard was a muffled shot and he fell over. Well, he was still alive. They kept him on life support and then they pulled the plug at 1 p.m. the next day, January 29th. And if you're like me, I always wanted to know where he died, and I was just real curious. In fact, here's where he lived with his wife, Kathy Cochran, and right here in this building. And I've seen a lot of pictures of him partying on those terraces with Tony Orlando, one of his friends at the time. And like I said, again, this is where Rodney Dangerfield lived, which was kind of ironic, another great comedian of the 20th century. Okay, well, here you go. Here's a nice little shot. He was staying in this extended stay hotel, the Beverly Hills Plaza Hotel, like I said, and he had married his wife, Kathy. She was actually a cocktail waitress when he married her in 1975. And they said that she slapped him with divorce papers after a year and 2 months because a couple of days before she had slapped him with the divorce papers, he had been caught driving under the influence with Quaaludes, and apparently he was always on Quaaludes. He was depressed, and she said that she wanted to get divorced from him because she felt that he was endangering their infant child, Freddie Prinze Jr. In fact, I guess because maybe he was close to where she was living with the baby right here, she also slapped him with the papers to keep away, a restraining order. And they said that he was already depressed but that just like sent him into an even deeper spiral. In fact, the night before he committed suicide, he was calling all day his estranged wife. He was calling his mother and his manager, Dusty Snyder. He said he didn't like the tone of his voice, so he rushed over here to the hotel. And when he walked in, he said he was calling his mother, and he was saying his goodbyes. And he said that he heard him talking to his mother, Maria Graniela, and he said, "Mom, I love you very much, but I can't go on. I need to find peace." And then he called Kathy, his wife. "I love you, Kathy. I love the baby, but I need to find peace. I can't go on." And then they said that he left a note after he had died, and it said, "I must end it. There's no hope left. I'll be at peace. No one had anything to do with this. My decision totally. Freddie Prinze. P.S. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Dusty's here. He's innocent. He cared." I can't believe it. And you know, it was such a shock to the world. And in fact, 4 months before he committed suicide, he had signed an NBC deal worth $6 million over 5 years. So he had a lot going for himself. And in fact, in 1982, his wife, she sued the psychiatrist for overprescribing Quaaludes, and she got pretty a hefty sum. I think it was like about $2 million. And then they actually when at the time of his death, it was ruled a suicide. And then in 1983, it was ruled an accident because of the Quaaludes. So they got a hefty sum from the insurance company too. I think that was like $1 million. And you want to know a factoid, which is kind of weird? 8 days before the great Freddie Prinze put a gun to his head, he performed at Jimmy Carter's inaugural ball, January 20th, 1977. So I thought that was kind of weird. And here he's performing for the president in Washington, and then from 8 days later, he puts a bullet into his head right here. Okay, he was brought up in Washington Heights, on the island of Manhattan, and he was half Hungarian. And in fact, there at his stand-up shows, he used to introduce himself as a Hungarian. Okay, his dad, his name was Edward Karol Preutzel, a Hungarian immigrant, and his mother was Maria Graniela, Puerto Rican, like I said. And then he went to Fiorello H. LaGuardia School of Music and Art and Performing Arts, and then he found that he could make his fellow students laugh, so he ended up dropping out in his senior year to be a stand-up comic. And boy, what a fast trajectory. And already famous, world famous, performing at the president's inaugural ball, and dead at 22. What a fast, sky high to the stratosphere life, and to end it by one's own hand. Wow. Okay, he was actually the first comedian to ever get invited by Johnny Carson to, of course, not only perform, but to actually sit with Johnny. And then this guy, he was so talented, he even hosted a bunch of episodes of The Tonight Show, which I even remember watching those, and I go, man, this guy he's so slick, and he's so fast, and he's just so intelligent. I mean, a 22-year-old young man, and to have that type of ability to know how to carry himself socially, and then the jokes. I mean, this guy was fantastic. I remember the night. I even remember the moment, the feeling that I got when I heard on the radio. I remember I was in the kitchen and I was getting something to eat, and I had the radio on, and they said that Freddie Prinze the Prince of Comedy was dead at 22. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Okay, another thing, his show, Chico and the Man, it was always on a Friday night, and I thought this was kind of like another weird factoid. He shot himself a couple of hours after on a Friday night. The episode number 58, January 28th, 1977, season 3 of Chico and the Man. It was called Champs Ain't Chumps. I don't know, that's another kind of weird thing. Maybe he saw the show, or I don't know. God only knows what the guy was thinking. So and actually the producer, James Comack of Chico and the Man, he traditionally wanted Cheech and Chong in that show. In fact, they said that James Comack, he stole the idea from a couple of their skits, one called Pedro and Man, and then the Old Man in the Park. So another little factoid there. But if you were alive in that era, there was 2 catchphrases that emanated from that show, Chico and the Man. Everywhere you went, every time you saw Freddie on a TV show or whatever, he'd say, "Looking good." So that was a famous catchphrase that Freddie Prinze coined. In fact, the first one that he coined on the show was, "It's not my job." So he got a lot of flack from the Hispanic community, and they said, "Hey man, you're just perpetuating prejudices against Hispanics, that stereotype." So he heard the fans, and then he changed the catchphrase to "Looking good." Okay, well, here it is. This is where he committed suicide. And I always wanted to know myself. And like I said, you can Google pictures where he's actually on one of these terraces right here. I even remember the color of the building. And Tony Orlando, he said the eulogy at his funeral, and he's buried in the Hollywood Hills at Forest Lawn if you want to go visit his grave. So wherever you're at, Freddie, our Prince of Comedy, good night, sweet Prince.